imagine DOGE with empathy. We're not talking about firing people, but take a resource-strapped organization like city government that has the most antiquated technology you can imagine, and think about how you can identify savings within that framework to make city government work better for New Yorkers.
This week on the podcast, I had Julie Samuels, the head of Tech NYC. Julie has spent her career at the intersection of innovation and policy, and as the head of Tech NYC, she's become the most important voice in the room when it comes to the future of this city's tech industry. And hey, it wouldn't be an episode without a little politics. What is the tech industry's plan post-Trump?
I've been thinking a lot about that.
Welcome to the Newcomer Podcast. Julie Samuels, Tech NYC, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You work on sort of New York politics,
Yep.
New York State, and then obviously that all fits into sort of the federal landscape and sort of advocate on behalf of the tech crowd. And I feel like we share a similar sort of frame of reference where, you know, believe in tech, want it to work, but also believe in sort of the normal democratic reality and have to navigate that. So excited to have a conversation
I can't wait.
about everything going on.
We've been talking for a long time, you and I.
Yeah, I know. It's more than a decade.
More than a decade, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, let's start with the Mamdani Trump meeting.
Yeah.
In some ways, you know, the tech community, it's hard to paint with too broad of a brush. Wouldn't have picked Mamdani as their mayor, I think, among the different candidates. His ability to sort of like cozy up to Trump, is that a sign that he can sort of win over the business community? Or what do you take of
that's a really
his
good
popularity?
Question. Well, first of all, I think his popularity is also, well, first of all, he's uniquely talented.
Yeah.
Great at retail politics, just really good media presence. But so much of that is also that he knows how to use the tech platforms. He's the first, not the first, but one of the first mainstream politicians who's just nailed that,
Right.
who knows how to use the media to speak to people in a way that most politicians, surely most Democrats, have just not figured out at all. You know who else has, though, is, of course, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always, the politicians that maybe tech did not, certainly, plenty of people embraced Trump in tech, but, it took them a while. He wasn't their first choice. And then AOC obviously is pretty good at it too. None of the candidates that tech leaders might have chosen to lead the United States are the best at social
That's
media.
Right. It's very interesting. And part of this is the second time Zohran Mamdani has gone to the West Wing, to the Oval to see Trump. And I think both times the kind of takeaway was like, game recognizes game. And that Donald Trump, he gets it. And that's people should go look up the photo from the West Wing where Trump is holding up these two newspapers, one with the famous headline, Ford to NYC, drop dead, and the other one, which is a mock-up, basically, the same, but Trump to NYC, let's build. And, it's all about getting funding to build a more affordable housing here.
Sunshine Development or what? Sunnyside. Okay, what is the project?
It's a big affordable housing development. And basically, as I understand, the mayor went and asked for $21 billion in federal funding to help build this really big affordable housing project, which, everyone wants to build more housing. Everyone's a winner. Trump, you can take credit. And the picture is so telling because clearly the mayor's team brought these mock-ups, but Trump is holding them. And he's got a big smile. Like, you can tell it's not a fake smile. It's like I don't know. Listen, I can't get in Trump's head. But he's smiling. Like, it's a smile.
And it wasn't just the newspapers. They also, kept emphasizing how historic this would be, one of the biggest projects.
That's right.
Obviously, this is a New York real estate developer. This is what he wants. So what is the tech read on Mamdani?
Well, let me go back for a second. You said
Sure.
that a lot of people in tech he wouldn't be tech's first choice. And I think I generally agree with that. But I also want to point to one thing that is so interesting about tech and why tech is different than the other kind of traditional industries here, business industry, whatever, is that when they went back through the mayoral primary and looked at where all the donations came from, the employer, the business with the most employees who wrote checks to Zohran during the primary was, do you want to guess?
Google.
It was Google. Yeah. And many other tech employers were high in that top 10 list.
But was he Google's most contributed candidate?
I think so, but I'm not certain. I can't say for sure. We should look that up and maybe you can put in the notes or something. Yeah. I'll double check. Now, I think that where the employees are is not always where management and the executives are, to be fair. But I also don't think that a lot of the kind of traditional finance firms, the real estate firms, I don't think they have that same dichotomy where their employees are all supporting the kind of DSA candidate in the primary. That is a uniquely tech dynamic. And you and I know that dynamic has been part of the industry.
When I had, Keith Raboy on the podcast the other day, conservative, pro-Trump, he was sort of making the case that part of why all these, tech CEOs needed to capitulate so much to Trump was, because their employees had all donated to the Democrats. And this was sort of a contorted argument, but it's funny to hear it. So yes, the rank and file in Silicon Valley and New York of these tech companies is fairly liberal and sometimes even to the point of supporting DSA.
And I think it also makes even the executives who by and large might be more even anti-Mamdani, it kind of numbs that a little bit because even now, even with AI, so much about success in tech is attracting the right talent. And this is all part of the competitive landscape too, to be able to attract the right, smartest, best young people to come work at your company. So there's a balance for tech execs when you think about politics that is different than in other industries, I think.
Who do you represent in tech? I mean, it's interesting because you represent a lot of startups, and those startup founders are often more similar, I imagine, to some of the rank and file in terms of their outlook, and then the execs, or how do you think about who you represent?
I'll tell you quickly how Tech NYC is set up at a high level. We can dig in. So Tech NYC's got about 500 members, and it is a sliding scale. So it's free for startups to join, and then the largest employers pay $60,000 a year to be members, and then investors have their own scale. So we have 500 total members. We have a board of about 60 people. They are executives, CEOs, founders, GPs and firms, other senior execs from companies. So it's really, even though we spend a lot of time on politics, our main goal is to ensure that New York is the best place to build and grow a tech company. So that's everything we do is through that vision. So we work with policy people, but we also really work with the executives themselves. So who do we represent?
Tends to be the executives.
Yeah.
And do you survey, how do you decide what stance to take on an issue given we can talk about tech with a broad brush, but
it's really complicated. Well, this is, I don't have a very satisfying answer to this because I would tell you when we built the organization, I was really worried about this. How do we do the right process? How do we make sure we're getting it right? And something I've learned, we started the organization 10 years ago. This is our 10th anniversary this year. Something I've learned that's so interesting is that part is actually pretty easy. There is not a lot of space, there's not a lot. It's much more aligned and almost much more obvious which issues we should work on and why and how than I really feared going. I thought that would be much harder than it's
What are the top three right now? I imagine AI fear.
AI.
It's all AI. It's energy, data centers.
Everything that can touch
regulation.
AI, obviously. Listen, I think something that's been really interesting over the past decade that's shifted in our work is when we first started the organization, the issues were all kind of core tech policy, like what impacts a company's bottom line, data privacy. There was a marketplace tax, very tech-specific issues. The work has broadened significantly over the past 10 years for many reasons, but one of the reasons that I find the most interesting is that increasingly, every company is a tech company, obviously. I mean, that's kind of a trite thing to say, but it's true. And increasingly, tech is becoming one of the biggest, if not the biggest industries here in New York City. And what that means is that now the industry is more and more made up of New Yorkers than people for whom tech is their primary
They
goal.
care about everything. And so you're reflecting a broad set of interests.
That's right. So we already talked about the Sunnyside project. We're talking about housing. We're talking about public safety. We're talking about good schools, functioning public transit. We are talking more and more about the things that make it so that people who work in tech want to live here. Because if people who work in tech want to live here, then the companies will continue to locate here, we think. And then everything AI. AI, yeah.
I want to, I recently had last year, Daniel Lurie, the mayor of San Francisco, on stage at one of my events. I was interviewing him. he was the most warmly received person on stage all day, probably at any of our events, like Dario, the CEO of Anthropic. I mean, politicians, are much more charismatic than CEOs. And so he really had the crowd. They really were a believer. He was good at staying on message. It's funny though, when I was interviewing him, I was like, the tech people love you. Like, why is that? And he sort of made a point that, they didn't necessarily love him the whole campaign. He wasn't necessarily their first choice. Some of them stuck with London breeding. We don't need to get into the particulars of San Francisco, but now he has this warm embrace. And I think part of it is just, he likes tech, defends tech, says positive things about tech. Like, what do you think he's figured out, and what would you like Zohran Mamdani to learn from it that's realistic, given he is to the left a little bit of Lori, but Lori's the mayor of San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't think the politics are that fundamentally different from a right-left balance, but the messaging is different. I think that what he is plugged into also, you have to remember, of course, that it came on the backside of years of the city of San Francisco beating up on tech. And we were talking about this earlier before we started recording. There's this political dynamic. I think this is why so many tech leaders have kind of gone to the Trump side, where, these people, they built companies, they grow jobs, they make big investments. They feel like they've done everything right. We did everything we set out to do. We followed the rules. Sometimes we broke the rules, but we broke the rules in the conquest of bringing new technology to the world and employing so many people. And that's the tech world that I come from, that techno-optimist world that gets made fun of a lot now, but is actually it's pretty lovely. It's like a vision for the world that I wish were fundamentally true. And I think it is actually fundamentally true. It's just complex. Anyway, I think then we see this backlash, and these are people. They're not robots. They're not companies. They're people. And these people feel like, what did I do wrong all of a sudden? Why are you beating up on me?
Right. I think one thing, and the YouTube commenters might not agree with this, but I think we both have concluded is that, tech people and rich people really want to be loved and appreciated. And sometimes they care more.
Wants to be loved
everybody
and appreciated.
Does. Right. It is a fun, they don't lose sight of that. And it is sometimes less about the money, seemingly,
I think it's
and
almost
more about
always less about the money. But I think what happens is a lot of the politicians, both on the far left and the far right, they think it's about the money, and they're so rich. Why would they care? Why does it matter? But again, I think they sometimes, and Daniel Lurie's done a great job of this. They forget that under it all, these are still just people. And when they are feeling attacked as people, they're going to react. And their reaction, can be like, oh, well, screw you. I'm going to go to the White House now. But Daniel Lurie speaks their language.
Right. Daniel Lurie compliments them, says thank you, even as he knows he represents broader San Francisco, and it's not really their town to run. The classic madman line, that is what the money is for. I think the response is often you're getting paid well. Why do you also need to get thanked by politicians? Right. There are lots of, politicians need to be looking out for the rank and file person, not spending all their time thanking people who have already been rewarded by society. Yeah. I don't know It's
really interesting. I think from the way I see the world, which, this is just an opinion, of course, I think you can get farther if you try and work together in that way. That making that person an enemy because it's politically expedient is, I think, long-term more harmful given the realities of the world we live in. The example I always go back to, and the first time I really saw this was when I was in San Francisco, and everyone was throwing rocks at the Google buses. And I was like, what are you doing? Those engineers, you want those people to be with you. The people on the bus, they're actually, most of them are young. Most of them are early in their career. Most of them don't have families, or else they wouldn't be living in these apartments and commuting on the Google bus. And you're turning them into enemies. And I think we'd all have been better served had the Democrats done a better job of bringing those people in the fold. Because those people who had rocks thrown at their buses are now, many of them, I'm sure, people supporting Trump.
So can the tech business community have a strong working relationship with Zohran Mamdani, given it seems unlikely that he's going to run around saying, I love the tech business community? Well, I guess that's sort of the existential question.
I think they can. I think we will. I think there will be things we disagree on, and I think there will be things we agree on. And what we're trying to do at Tech NYC is identify the things we can agree on, and make real progress there. And let me just tell you what I think some of those are. And I think this is true, by the way, for every city. I think New York has unique scale, and we should be really doing some of this work here immediately, but I think it's true everywhere. Tech in government, start with that. Especially when we are talking about the affordability crisis. The mayor just announced that every city agency is going to have a chief savings officer who will have 45 days to identify savings within the agencies. That is like an ideal situation to use tech, and dare I say AI, to identify savings.
Democrats are traumatized by the DOGE experience here.
I mean, but I cannot stop talking about this. Like, imagine DOGE with empathy. Like, imagine DOGE in a way that felt more culturally aligned with New York City. You can totally envision that, right? We're not talking about firing people, but take a resource-strapped organization like city government that has the most antiquated technology you can imagine, and think about how you can identify savings within that framework to make city government work better for New Yorkers.
Totally.
It's so obvious, right? So, okay, I think that's one place.
Right. And everybody on the face wants a productive city government, so it's hard to disagree with it.
And in fact, some of this, I think, has to do with age. We have a young mayor. He has a young team. It is the first time that, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I imagine there are more digital natives working in City Hall right now than there have ever been.
And one of the things, I ultimately did, certainly rank Mamdani above Cuomo. He was, I think it was Brad Lander. But like he understands that city government needs to work.
Yes.
And the government needs to work if people are going to sign up for the progressive agenda. Right. And that you can't have a sort of, bleeding heart without like the governance
you have
that
to show
delivers
it.
on it.
You have to deliver. Right.
Right.
And clearly you live in a world, the great example of seeing technology work in practice in government to me is Omni, tap to pay on the subway. We all swiped our subway cards, and then during COVID, they redid the entire subway system. They put in tap to pay technology, and it just works. And it's
great for tourists.
And it's
great
as a
local, but it's amazing for tourists.
And I think about it a lot in this context. Tap to pay technology, using Apple Pay on your iPhone. How many times a day do you use Apple Pay?
All the time, right? It should be table stakes, right?
Yeah, right. It should be table stakes. And when you use the New York City subway, it is table stakes now. But we're not even talking about like leapfrogging to the next technology. We're talking about getting to the level of technology that everyone has in their pocket all the time anyway.
So number one, embrace tech,
in government.
Deliver on the efficient, progressive
I think that number two
want.
is really focus on education. And think hard about, this one's very...
Is this gifted in tracking? Or
No.
I'm curious what you think on education, but it's funny, like, Gary Tan in San Francisco, I think tweeted, or he has this Gary's List thing now, that a New York Post story where it says Zohran's going to get rid of gifted, and it's not even clear if they've really done anything more there, but people the right-wing media keeps putting that one front and center.
They love this one. Yeah.
Right, and obviously the tech community is very sensitive
I will say that,
to not elevating, the geniuses among us.
The New York City education is very complicated. It's very complicated. And on the G&T in particular, like
gifted and talented.
Like the tech industry, I would say, by and large, would not be happy if that were eliminated. They'd be very happy if it were eliminated. Definitely wouldn't be happy if it were cut back on. So I think, but we haven't really, there's a lot of rhetoric, but we haven't seen what's going to exactly happen there. So maybe I'll come back when we know more.
Right. I know. It is sort of one of those distraction issues, in that it gets everybody sort of fired up.
Another big one here is charter schools. That's something that the tech industry has been very supportive of. And that's something that the Mamdani administration seems less supportive of. So that also might come to a head. Again, we'll see.
Where can they agree on education?
Thinking about curriculum.
Okay.
Thinking about curriculum, thinking about how we are preparing students, not just for jobs of the future, important, but also preparing students to live in a world where these tools are out there. One of the things that I've been thinking about politically is 10, 11, 12 years ago when Bill de Blasio first became mayor. Fred Wilson, former chair of Tech NYC's board, venture capitalist, of course, from Union Square Ventures, kind of went in, saw the new mayor and said, I think we should work together to ensure that there's computer science education in every school. And they launched a 10-year public-private partnership called CS for All, and they ensured that there was computer science education in every city in New York, in every single New York City public school. And that's the answer, right? Maybe that answer looks a little different now. The CS education of 2014 is not the same as what we think the tech education should look like in 2026. But those are the places I think where we really can and should be working together to support the kids in the schools.
Is tech a barrier to getting cell phones out of school? Or?
No, we supported that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that we did with the governor last year, the cell phone ban. This was so funny. We could talk. The politics around tech are so interesting. So Tech NYC supported the governor's proposal for the bell-to-bell ban to get cell phones out of schools. And we did that very publicly. And a lot of people called me after and they were like, wow, I can't believe you did that. That was great, or that whatever they said, but I got a lot of incoming. And I was like, I don't understand how our politics have gotten so calcified that you can't understand how I run an organization whose main goal is to support the tech ecosystem in New York City and state, but also understand that kids shouldn't have cell phones in classes. Like, this is very weak.
And obviously, a lot of these tech executives themselves are very careful about their own children using devices, so they understand that it is I think that's device.
What's made a lot of our politics actually really hard is that people feel like you can't say those two types of truths, that you can't hold those two truths together. Like, of course, both those things can be true. In fact, I think they need to be true. I think the tech ecosystem will thrive if we are more open about the challenges, which is that kids shouldn't be on phones during class. Of course they shouldn't be. That's insane.
So education's number two. It seemed like you had a third one.
I mean, I have a lot. I think those are the first kind of places we're looking. And then, I think that...
Are you on the YIMBY train as an organization?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely on the YIMBY train. I think we've always been on the YIMBY train. I think that's also, it's interesting to see which pieces of the kind of tech zeitgeist are the same here and in the Valley and which ones are different. And the YIMBY train, same.
Well, in some ways, California needs it. I mean, New York is getting on it after California. Yeah. So California got to more of a crisis point, whereas obviously New York is a large city.
California got to such a crisis, and there's a number of reasons, of course, but we should talk about the subway and public transit and how transformative it is to have such a huge 24/7 functioning public transit system, which means you can, here in New York, which means you can live, you have much more geographic diversity in where you can live and get to work. And that's a huge differentiator.
How do taxes play into all of this? I mean, I talked earlier about the mayor of San Francisco who's been pro-tech, but obviously now California, you have billionaires literally fleeing the state because they're worried about a referendum. Referendums themselves are funny because obviously it's there's no politician necessarily to stop it. It's, the public could do it and there's nothing to be done. And so there, we have the Google co-founders leaving the state. And,
it's crazy
and
what's
Peter
going
Thiel.
on.
They're not coming to New York, right? They're going to Florida. I mean, I guess if you're going to run from taxes, you're going to run.
If you're running from taxes, this is probably not the place you run to.
Have you tried to get it? Have you made the pitch to anybody, move to New York because of the billionaire tax issue?
Every time a politician says they're going to raise taxes, people who represent companies, wealthy people, we're always everyone's going to leave. And the politicians are you're never going to leave. You always say that. And it's this kind of game of chicken and mouse. Chicken and mouse? Is that no. Cat and mouse. Cat and mouse.
Chicken and egg, cat and mouse. That's
it's fine. Whatever. Yeah. It's it's this little, that isn't even the right analogy. The right analogy is it's a little bit of the boy who cried wolf.
Yes.
Which is to say you're never really going to leave. And then they're no, we will leave. But what's happened in California has been oh, no, they're going to leave. So I think that is interesting to know what is the number, what is enough to push you out. And I don't think it's ever just a tax proposal alone. But again, I think it gets to what we were talking about earlier.
The California one, it seems like there's potential to tax unrealized gains,
it
control
was,
of companies.
It was constructed
and so it did,
really poorly.
There was
and
a high risk that if it went through, it could hit specific people in a
and it would hit people before
way.
They're liquid in a way that would be really
right.
Unrealized gains part. You said that. Like, so, I mean, that is its own disaster there. But I think there is a feeling in tech, this kind of like, we've been a punching bag for so long and we're just sick of being your punching bag. You know, I'd note that most of the billionaires that I've seen reported having left California are a little bit older. They don't have school-age kids. Much tougher to pick up and move when, you know, you don't have school-age kids because everyone uses that app where you count your nights. Like, these people aren't selling their California homes. Or some might be. They're just going to spend like, you know, 51% of their nights somewhere else or whatever it is. But with that goes the tax revenue, which is significant for a state.
So how much time are you spending opposing taxes on behalf of the tech community?
Right now, not really.
Because Mamdani is saying we need more money.
Yeah, but
it's like we'll do property taxes.
I think there isn't really a live proposal. If there were a tax proposal, so we're actually in a really interesting time in New York State's political cycle. We're in the budget process in Albany right now, which will go on for another month or two. Yeah, 2 months. And then, you know, our session here goes until summer. And so right now, this is the busiest time on a lot of these political things. There really isn't a tax proposal to react to if there was some live tax proposal. But the governor's been really consistent that she will not raise income taxes. And you can't do it without her.
She's done an amazing job. It's been amazing.
She's amazing.
Shocking.
I
mean, maybe you're not shocked, but it took me a while
I am not shocked.
Like when she delayed congestion pricing, I was like, oh, terrible. And then it was like, oh, you're totally right. That was the savvy move.
She has been, she's great. But she's done things for the state and for tech specifically that have been so good. And she just does the work. You know, one thing.
What for tech specifically?
Well, there's a handful of things. One of the things she's done that is the coolest is she has funded a public-private partnership, so there's private dollars too, called Empire AI.
Yep.
Which is amazing. It is a independent 501c3 that she's funded. It's a coalition of research institutions. It includes our city system CUNY, our state system SUNY, Columbia, Cornell, NYU, RPI, Rochester schools, you know, all these private and public institutions. They are building a supercomputer in Buffalo. They already have the first version up and going, but the eventual final state will be huge. It will be, I think, one of, if not in the end, the most powerful, the biggest academic research computer, surely in the country, maybe the world. And New York academics are the only people who have access to it, and it's amazing. And right now, really only private sector has access to the kind of compute that our academics have because of Empire AI. It is incredibly forward-looking, incredible for the state. I mean, that when you think about what Stanford did for the Valley, I think that's what Empire AI will do for New York, because what happens is you've got these postdocs and other professors, and they're choosing which school to go to, and they're going to find out that the only computer on which they can do their research is in New York.
Part of me is skeptical just because, you know, the scale of investment on private enterprise in San Francisco is so large that they have these, you know, Neo Labs and, you know, OpenAI and Anthropic, they get so much money. On the other hand, obviously, you know, Mayor Bloomberg's work in New York, establishing, you know, a tech campus here, really did change sort of the penetration. So some of these government projects turn into something.
I totally support the companies creating compute for academics. Like, the more compute for academics and research, I think the better in general. But there are a number of academics, and there is good reason to think that academics want access to compute that is their own. You know, no one else, I mean, technically in this instance, a 501c3 owns it, but they have control over it. No one else can do or say what kind of research can happen on that machine.
You know, the role of government. Sort of independent, non-corporate.
That's right.
Research.
And how can we help government, especially with, you know, the way the federal government is clamping down on funding research, and just kind of thinking about funding for universities. It's even more important. And this is the role. State government can play that role. They are in a unique position to be able to fund at scale. You know, it's going to end up being like a $700 million machine over time. And so that's been that's all. It's amazing. And she's done a bunch of other great stuff too. We worked really hard with her at the end of last year. I'm sure we've talked a lot about the SB 53 and the RAISE Act here in New York, the two big kind of
AI regulation.
Yeah, and one thing we did here with the leadership of Governor Hochul, she was really, really just great on this. She kind of took the bill that we had on the table here, and it was after SB 53 had become law in California, and looked at it and was like, we can do a version of this, but let's make them work together. And in the absence of congressional action, in the absence of Congress like creating...
So to match it with California, so there wouldn't be two regimes.
Right. So it's like, and it's important, and we're going to have guidelines here, and we're not going to just let the companies run amok. But what we're going to do is also make it easy, or at least make it streamlined for the companies to comply. We're not going to create all kinds of barriers just because. And so that was great. That was like real leadership. That was hard to get done.
The public seems very concerned about data centers.
Yeah.
They seem more worried about AI than upbeat. I mean, I think we literally saw this week that, Block is laying off like 40% of their workers that they're attributing to AI. So I guess workers have a right to be worried about AI on some level. I don't know what is your read on tech's sentiment with the electorate?
I think it's a very good question. This is something I worry a lot about too. I think that if we don't get this moment right, we could be shooting ourselves in the foot here across the country. Competitiveness matters. New York versus, let's say, Texas, but also America versus China or whatever. For starters, I come at this from the vantage point that technology is coming. There are some tweaks around the side that regulation can shift it a little bit one way or another, but it's coming. So we can either find a way to build it here, to figure out how to make it work here or somewhere else. So
I agree with that, but I'm not sure the voters.
I don't think
they are trying to kill data centers.
I mean, the data center. Well, to go back to Governor Hochul, she's got a great proposal on this, which is actually it was in her budget before Trump has said something similar, which is you can build it here, but you can't put it on our grid. You have to pay for your own power, and that's more politicians to find a way to get to yes within a framework. That is what I think we need to see. But I do worry about the sentiment. I worry too that so many politicians just kind of follow those polls and chase where the voters are instead of trying to be leaders. The long arc of tech. One lesson sort of politicians learned and the public was we didn't regulate social media, and then we came to regret it, and it was too powerful to put back in the box, and we don't necessarily enjoy our time on it. And I'm sort of sympathetic to that on social media, whereas, I like AI. To me, when AI is done well, it's sort of a truth-seeking, valuable thing, improving our quality of life. I don't know. How do you sort of stop politicians and the electorate from taking the wrong lessons from social media? Let me tell you some of the things we're doing right now. One thing we're doing in particular that I'm so proud of is we have a project at the Tech NYC Foundation called Decoded Futures. You can Google it, learn more. And what it is it's all, again, through our foundation, so it's free. And we take cohorts. We're in our fourth cohort right now of about 20, 25 nonprofits. And we do 8 weeks. We pair them with volunteers from the tech sector, and we do 8 weeks of training to teach them about AI, how to build AI, how to use AI internally, how to also just change their framework. These are politicians or nonprofits?
Oh, okay.
Nonprofits.
Okay.
But the idea,
get them hooked.
Get them hooked. Totally. I mean, it's
if people are vibe coding, seeing the value, building something or using it, right?
To go back to the Block example, that's they today announced how many people the layoffs, thousands, 4,000 or something. I don't know.
I think it was 4,000.
Yeah, I think it was 4,000. But most nonprofits, city agencies, these are resource-strapped organizations. We're not talking about laying people off. We're talking about being able to do more. And some of it is so basic. It's thinking about AI tools that help you automate a spreadsheet. Most people I know who go work in the social sector, who go work for nonprofits, don't go there because they want to sit in front of Google Sheets all day. They want to be out in the field. They want to go do the work that they're passionate about. That's why they choose to work in the nonprofit sector. And something AI can do is like
skip the bullshit work.
Create capacity.
Right.
Create capacity.
Right.
And we think fundamentally that a couple things. Number one, you start working. We started in New York with nonprofits. Nonprofits, there are hundreds of thousands of nonprofits here. Nonprofits do so much of the social services that New Yorkers depend on. Meeting New Yorkers where they are. It doesn't have to be nonprofits. That's our project, but whatever. You can do this with small businesses. You can do it with city government. Imagine any small resource limited organization that probably doesn't have a lot of internal technical skill. Okay, so number one, we've been doing that, and it's been great. And the nonprofits at the end of their 8 weeks tell you about what they've built, and like literally sometimes I tear up. It's transformative for them. It's amazing.
And with the idea that they can be strong advocates for you if they're persuaded.
And they're just regular people too. They're not like tech, they're not tech bros saying AI is great. They're like regular people in the world. So I think that is the actual work. But the thing I think is crucial about it, and this is like a little abstract or maybe like a little woo-woo or whatever. It's not woo-woo. It's a little like trite maybe. But there is a moment, we are living in a moment of significant technological transformation, like whether you like it or not. We are. And one of the biggest risks we face is that some people are going to capitalize on that and everyone else is going to get left behind. And I think it is incumbent upon us, just as like people in the world, but also on us at Tech NYC and wherever, that we try and like avoid that.
And especially in New York City, we win at capitalism.
Yes, we win at capitalism. But we had to bring everyone along with us. So that's the kind, I think we need more of Decoded Futures. We need more work like that. When people actually, to your point, when people play with AI, they're like, oh, this is awesome. Right now, people are scared. Like, we need to do a better job of demystifying it, of explaining what it actually is, how it can fit into a regular person's life or job right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, people who are just using Google search results and getting Gemini answers don't always appreciate that is the sort of AI we're talking about. And also the tech industry is still turning the technology into like direct applications where it's like, you can do this thing.
Yeah.
Right now you sort of have to be a little more proactive and like motivated to get some of the value out of it.
That's the case for New York, right? Like the way I think a lot of these technical cycles go is they build the hard tech in the valley, and it's kind of like just, a bunch of dudes. It's always dudes. I wish it were more women. Like in a group house. It used to be a garage in Palo Alto. Now maybe it's like a townhouse in Hayes Valley or whatever, and they're like tinkering away and they've got this great idea. But then it comes time to figure out, well, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to actually use it? What are they going to use it to do? And I feel very bullish on New York because I think we will answer those questions here.
Right. Build the applications, understand what the companies need.
And we don't have those answers yet. We don't.
If you were to give like, to go back to the mayor and where we started, the mayor, like one piece of advice.
Yeah.
To build like an agenda that is at once progressive and fitting his values and the tech industry, like what would the advice be?
It would be to dig in and figure out how to make technology work better in government. People see that, they understand it. I think it aligns with his campaign, with his vision for New York. I think it aligns with his base. It aligns with the private sector as well. Like I think for every politician, for every elected official, there's a different answer. It's how you ran, it's what you ran on, it's what you believe in. And I think that what it seems to me the mayor believes in and where technology can be deployed, it's very clear that it's in the space of like making government work better.
This is more national, but like the tech industry in California certainly has cozied up to Trump. Like New York, we don't necessarily have all the CEOs to do the cozying, but like, what is the tech industry's plan post-Trump? Or if Democrats come back in, like, I don't know.
I've been thinking a lot about that. Well, first of all, I think New York will do much better in that instance because we
and that they had to navigate. They saw. Well, in California, they have a Democratic governor.
There's something that I think about a lot. I think this is true surely in tech. I'm not sure it's specific to tech. I think tech is just a little bit more immature than some other industries in that it's newer, I don't mean immature in any way other than it's literally younger. But something that's really interesting about politics is a lot of times you'll see people who've seen great success in business assume that they also get politics, and it's different. And it's a different skill set. It's a different set of equities. And I think that, you've got some people in tech who are like chasing the thing they think is the right thing. And there's going to be some hard lessons. Like if a Democrat, depending on which Democrat is in the White House, which I personally hope is the case in 2028, again, depending on who that person is, I think there are going to be some people in tech who are going to have to pay a price.
Right.
I think that there is space to show up at certain events. People understand, like, whether you like it or not, Donald Trump is the democratically elected president, and there are meetings and things that you go to. But then there are certain things, donations, certain events, certain vibes that you don't have to go to. And I think that there are no hard and fast rules, but I think that Americans who pay attention to these things like have a gut sense of where those lines are, what the difference between kind of responsibly running a business during this administration
without being Mark Benioff and saying send
without like fealty to dear leader. Yeah. I think that
who do you think in New York is doing a good job of like representing the tech industry, or who do you see as sort of like the standard bearers here?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think if you look at technyc.org and look at my board, you get a sense of who I think that is. Like I said, Fred chaired my board for 10 years. We have our first new
Is that Fred
chair.
Wilson?
Fred Wilson.
I'm guessing. Who's the key?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the VCs like loom a little larger.
Yeah, of course. We have Thrive.
Right.
Makes a ton of news. Neil Blumenthal.
Someone from
Warby
Thrive
Parker.
is on your board, or?
Yeah, Josh is not on our board, but Kelly Sims, a partner there, is on our board. Yeah, I mean, people are really engaged here. People who live in New York care a lot about the civic infrastructure. Not just infrastructure, just like kind of the civic landscape of New York. New York is a city where people care a lot. You cannot, it's like kind of logistics in some ways. You don't get in your car and drive to work and go to your office. Like you are constantly among New Yorkers. No matter how wealthy you are, no matter how big the business you run is, it doesn't matter. You are surrounded by New Yorkers. And that creates, I think, a really special dynamic with the city that makes my work so much more fun.
I mean, that's the beauty of, the subway. You feel, and just walking the streets, you're part of the community in a way that I think part of what's corroded California is San Francisco in particular. It's like you can Uber from one place to the next and be in your little enclave and the next place and then be like, why is the city letting, homeless people over? It's like the failures of San Francisco corroded tech politics, I think, in a way that New York just hasn't.
And it won't. And there's other industries here, and there's other things going on. And we talk about tech, but we talk about Wall Street. And it's not. New York benefits from the diversity, not just of people, but of industry and experience. And I think that's why tech continues to thrive here. Is
competition with China like animating people, or do you think that is?
I do think it's animating people. I think it should animate people. I think it's real. And I think particularly in this moment, I think to go back to the data centers, are we going to stop building data centers here? Do we think that people are just going to stop building data centers anywhere then? I just.
Right. I mean, I do feel like, this doomerism, while it's good to be careful, I'm very supportive of Anthropic having a constitution and pushing back on the Defense Department, but I
think it's the Department of War now.
No, well, the Congress hasn't said it's the Department of War.
Oh,
it depends where you take your cues. They put Department of War on the wall, but I don't think the law has actually been changed. But the steam engine analogy is basically like if you have this great technology coming. Do you really not want to lean into something that is going to ultimately improve your quality of life? And if you don't do it, whether it's in Texas or China, it's going to happen somewhere. I get and am bought into some of the we need to build AI in a sort of ethical and intentional way, but we shouldn't let that sort of concern stop us from embracing a technology that will ultimately make our lives much better.
Absolutely. I think I just see it's funny, the word progressive doesn't really mean this anymore, but I think of myself as a progressive person in that progress to me means looking at how new technology can make things better and that history shows as a guide that whenever these really disruptive moments happen, there are always more new jobs on the other side, for instance. But I don't want to be too Pollyanna-ish. The transition to get to what those new jobs are is messy. And that's the moment we're living in. And we can either, I think, do the hard work of addressing that head on and having like the real hard conversations about what that means for New York City, for New York State, for America. What's it going to do to the workforce? How do we prepare people? Or we can like spend our time debating banning data centers, which in my mind is actually a real distraction from the hard work of figuring out what a kind of not post-AI world, but what a world with AI, prevalent AI tools is going to look like, and how to make sure that transition works for as many people as possible. Like that, to me, that is the question for our time.
Julie, well, yeah, we'll have you on in a year. We'll see how it
where
all
we're at. Yeah.
turned out. All right, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. That's our episode. I'm Eric Newcomer. Thank you so much for listening to the Newcomer Podcast. If you're new here, I was a longtime tech reporter at Bloomberg and The Information. I started a Substack called Newcomer, it's my last name, in 2020, and I've been tirelessly working on a YouTube channel. I also host the Cerebral Valley AI Summit and have a podcast with my friends Max and James called The Cerebral Valley Show. Here at the Newcomer Podcast, we're trying to get to the heart of what's going on in startups and venture capital. Sometimes we veer into the intersection of tech and politics, trying to have honest, direct conversations, an independent-minded show with someone who knows how to ask hard questions, who likes to fight a little bit. We're finding our voice. We love your comments. I've stopped saying right, you know. I'm reading the YouTube comments for good and bad, and we appreciate all your support. Go harass us on the Substack too, you know, newcomer.co. Thank you so much for following along. Please, we really do enjoy your feedback, of course. Like, comment, subscribe. Excited for what we've got in store for you this year. Thanks so much. See you next week.